all so much for joining us today and for joining us in the admissions office's inaugural open house webinar series. When things happened with the pandemic and we needed to kind of, spring into action in a way that was virtual, it did allow for us to be able to become much more accessible. You could come and meet with us, hear about our programs in a virtual fashion from the comfort of your, office, your couch, whatever. And so we're really happy we've been able to do this. This has been essentially 2 weeks of different sessions that really help to humanize the student experience, our faculty, the curriculum. And this first week has really been focused on all of our method areas, and that is what we will be focusing on today. So welcome once again. Some of you may be prospective, thinking about applying. Some of you may have just been admitted to the spring semester. So if so, congratulations and welcome to the community. We're hoping that these sessions really help to familiarize yourself with the curriculum and figure out, what kind of method area you'd want to do once you officially became a student. We will be utilizing a Q&A feature. If you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A portion. My amazing colleague, Natasha, is going to be supervising that and answering questions and helping to reiterate things that our panelists tell you today. And we are going to basically begin with a quote that I really, really love, which is, social work is a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. And one of the reasons I really love this particular quote from the International Federation of Social Workers is that I think it really does capture everything that social work is. It's micro, meso, macro. You can deal with individuals one-on-one. You can serve populations, communities. You can work in a macro sense where you're, crafting policy for large populations. And it really is all captured within an MSW, and it's very flexible. And there's a lot of room for you to evolve in your career and to, change the kind of work that you're doing. And I think that, this really illuminates that in this quote. I also like to show everyone the schedule. It's kind of like a little snapshot of what a typical schedule would be like here at CSSW. By and large, students who are doing an MSW program take similar foundation year or generalist courses. They're approved by the CSWE, which is the Council for Social Work Education. And these are really classes that give you, the building blocks of social work. And then your second year is when you begin in your advanced method area. And we have 4 different advanced method areas here at Columbia. And they are advanced clinical social work, which we are going to be discussing today, advanced generalist practice and programming, policy practice, and social enterprise administration. And we have a number of fields of practice that you will also take with that. So you will combine both the method area and a field of practice so that you can really hone in and specialize in an area of social work that really speaks to you, so that you can either work in a setting that really, speaks to you as a social worker, or to serve a population or to help ameliorate a social issue that really matters to you, that you feel you want to make positive change towards crafting, some sort of programming or working with individuals in that capacity. But as I said before, today is going to be dedicated all to our advanced clinical practice method area. And we have an incredible panel for you today of amazing alumni and a tremendous faculty member. So I'd like to begin just by allowing them to all introduce themselves and to just give a little general introduction, perhaps, what you do, and also, where you are currently located, because I know you are all kind of either in the East Coast or West Coast. It really varies. So Professor Kapadia, we will begin with you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, John. It's such a pleasure to be here. I remember being a prospective student and having all sorts of questions, and I think this forum will be great at helping you to get some clarity about the program and hopefully entice you to apply and join us here. My name is Amy Kapadia. I started my involvement at the school in 2004 as a student, and I've had one foot in the building ever since. Cautionary tale can happen to you too. and I joined the full-time faculty in 2015. And my background, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, um, is forever and always a clinician, an instructor, intervention researcher, and I am thrilled to be here today. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We will go with Ashley next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome and congrats on just thinking about social work school. Just it's a big milestone on your academic and career journeys. I'm Ashley and I'm from New Jersey, New York. Same thing, more or less. I just not just graduated. Well, I don't even know what year it is. I graduated in 2020, May 2020. This whole year has felt like a blur, as we all know. And I am a psychotherapist. I work at a couple of practices, well, 2 practices. And I'm really excited to be with you all today. I'm here to answer any questions, even when I run off to actually go work. So I will leave my email and, encourage any questions that are still lingering that maybe that you think of later you're welcome to reach out. And congratulations again.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us today. And finally, Ethan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ethan. Similar to Ashley, I'm also originally from New Jersey. And I'd also like to say, congrats on being here too. I know this is a big step and can also be a little bit nerve-wracking. I remember feeling nervous attending panels like these. I currently live in Los Angeles. I graduated from CSSW actually this year in May 2021, which feels somehow very recent and also like a long time ago, strangely. And I currently work in a private practice where I offer comprehensive DBT.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely be asking you about DBT later on in this session. But I'm going to begin by asking you, Dr. Kapadia, can you tell us in a nutshell what the clinical track is here at CSSW?
So, John, you have to keep me on point to that in a nutshell. If I drone on, feel free to cut me off.
Okay.
And I was thinking about this earlier today. I think the advanced clinical practice track here at CSSW, I see it as a holistic way or approach to integrating our scientific and experiential knowledge and skills into our clinical practice. And we do this by drawing upon some broad lenses to guide our work, specifically anti-oppressive practice, trauma-informed care, person and environment, and resilience. There's also this significant emphasis on concepts and histories and everyday realities that are so present in our work. Power dynamics, oppression, and privilege in particular, as they relate to the intersections of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, immigrant status, ability status, and other marginalized identities and positionality. Thus, the ongoing work of self-reflection, and I imagine Ashley and Ethan can speak to this as well, self-awareness and self-reflection become super critical components of the ACP approach. And finally, as such, the selection of this track in particular in the second year, I think, supports students in embodying these lenses as you all enhance your knowledge and applications of skills and core elements relating to assessment, intervention, and clinical evaluation within particular fields of practice that I think we'll talk about in a little bit. I wanted to add something else. I think I'll hold off for now. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, absolutely. No,
that's
a beautiful summary. So thank you so much. And so students typically, decide, as they're preparing for their second year that what method area they'd like to do. Can you tell us about some of the classes that a student would take in the advanced clinical practice method area?
Yeah, so, over the last couple of years, faculty committees have been working really hard on actually changing and revamping the course to ensure this coverage of critical content. For example, suicide assessment and trauma-informed care, psychoeducation, for example, to ensure that these core critical content is covered adequately and integrated across the ACP group. And they also prepare students well for licensing. So that first semester of your second year, you'll take these core generalist course, the advanced clinical practice course. And there are a number of features now that I think we've developed to frame this track. One is these core or common elements, which I'll talk about in a moment. Another is a skills lab that integrates these core elements and translates that into application within the broad and complex environment that we all find ourselves working in. And finally, depending on the expertise of a particular instructor, students will also learn, along with those core components, various evidence-based and other ways of approaching clinical work. And let me just share a little bit about those core elements. I think they highlight skills as well that are important to ACP practitioners. One is this functional assessment, including biopsychosocial and spiritual assessments, review of suicide and crisis assessment and safety, fundamental principles of psychoeducation and shared decision making. Ashley and Ethan, are these ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Active listening and reflection, emotion regulation and mindfulness. There are a few others as well that sort of embody the core elements that you'll learn. Students also take an important clinical evaluation course, happens to be one of my favorite courses to teach. And we focus on the many ways of knowing whether the work we do as clinicians is actually effective, and explore the complexities of context in clinical settings and in people's lives, and determining what actually effectiveness looks like and how to assess that. And the course focused significantly too on this notion of self-reflection and self-assessment.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much there and so much that you'll learn in this particular track, especially on different modalities and different assessment processes. So it's really amazing to hear all about that. Within the advanced clinical track, there is an option if one would like to specialize in dialectical behavioral theory. So Ethan, my next question is for you, because I know that you did that specialization. Can you tell us, I guess it's hard to do that in a nutshell, but can you give a general summary of what DBT is for someone who might not be familiar, but is interested in it, and what the application process was like to be a part of the DBT specialization at CSSW?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as you said, DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. It is a behavioral therapy, just, I guess, first and foremost, just to know. I do also want to offer, I guess I realize I should offer a bit of a content warning, just because a lot of the people who do seek out DBT treatment can be, I guess we can say, like sort of high risk clients. It was a therapy that was originally formulated for people who have borderline personality disorder, but has generally been found to be helpful for people who experience what we like to say is emotion dysregulation. It's like an emotion sort of focused therapy. So people who, you know, have a hard time sort of sitting with their emotions, who have maybe, you know, we say ineffective coping strategies, such as things like self-harm or suicidal ideation or substance use as well, though it really varies. And there are a lot of different sort of components to the treatment. It's pretty involved, but I personally, I'll say very rewarding. So there's like an individual part, there's a skills group part as well that clients will attend. There's a phone coaching piece. So just so you know, going in as a therapist with my clients, they can reach out to me 24/7. And a big part of that is we teach people new behaviors. We call them skills, ways to cope, ways to interact with people. And so they can reach out to me sort of in the moment, and I can provide sort of, insight and feedback and practice and whatnot day to day. And then finally, there's a fourth piece as well, which is a team component for the therapist. So I attend a team meeting every week in which me and the other therapists at my practice who all do DBT, we work together collaboratively. DBT is thought of as like a really sort of a team treatment, which I really enjoy. And and they're basically able to provide insight and feedback for me when when I might be struggling, and I can do the same for them. And it's generally, you're able to offer a lot of support. So like I said, it's very involved. It can be challenging, and I also think it's super rewarding. And even though it's a pretty specific kind of therapy, I also think it provides a really great framework as well. In general, just sort of starting out, learning to become a therapist, and it provides a lot of different tools that you can offer to people sort of day one when they first sort of start seeing you. Just to answer the question quick, I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time. I'm sorry.
No?
Okay, really quick in terms of application. Around now, there should be what are they, informational, like sort of panels like these, where Dr. Ivanov, who runs the program, will sort of just be introducing DBT. She'll give a much better explanation on it than I did. And you'll basically get to hear about it. So I would recommend definitely going to that if you're interested. And from there, you have to write, I think, just one essay, pretty short, just one essay, kind of just about your interest in it, why you want to do it. Get 2 letters of recommendation, if I'm remembering everything correctly. Once you submit all of that, due dates around, I want to say in December, though I would recommend submitting, kind of as soon as you can if you're interested. And then there are 2 interviews after that, if you are selected.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And just so everyone knows, this is something that once you are admitted as a student, then you can apply to be a part of this specialization through the process that Ethan just explained right now. And we'll get into the fields of practice and field placement. But when you're in DBT, your advanced method year field placement is DBT in nature. So we'll also ask Ethan about that a little later on. But for now, Ashley, I wanted to ask you, when students are figuring out what it is they want to do, they have a good portion of their foundation year to do that. Can you tell us why you chose the advanced clinical practice? And if there were any sort of highlights that were particularly formative for you?
Absolutely. So I kind of always knew this, personally being a little bit transparent. I have family in the field. I kind of come from, my mom's a psychotherapist. I have aunts. So it was kind of a calling. I'm sure that's why mostly you're right here, because it really is a calling, this field, whether you pursue the clinical track, another track. So I always knew that I like clinical. And the beauty of CSSW is that even if you do declare the clinical track, you are more than welcome to take classes, and also required to, especially your first semester, to take classes outside of the track, so you can have a little breadth and depth of everything. And what really kind of transpired my decision, right, professors like Professor Claudia Little right here. I loved the class that she was describing, about our ways of knowing, and I really learned so much about that. And I'm definitely that student who's like, oh, for research, oh, stats, really, but I definitely was able to learn, even though I'm not a research person, there was some research involved in the class, and I definitely was interested in it. And Dr. Capaldi Little, Professor Capaldi Little, made it really interesting. And also I had another great professor named Raji, who actually, a really funny story, was Professor Capaldi Little's student. So as she said, you can become a professor, you can start as a student and become a professor. And I've had so many amazing professors who have really just kind of given me a flavor of what clinical social work means. And we do role plays. That's something that really got me into it. I'm also a theater person. That's my background. So I especially enjoyed that, just kind of acting out. And I know most people dread it, but I actually liked it, kind of acting out different clinical scenarios. And I can't emphasize enough that you don't have to be married to the focus method area that you declare. You don't have to be married to it. You can change it at the beginning of your second year. And even if you declare kind of a subset in the focus area, so I was mental health and disabilities, that doesn't mean I have to work with those populations forever and ever. It's just kind of like almost like a college major. You can look at it that way, but it doesn't mean you have to exactly work in a specific realm of social work for your whole life. It just kind of, gives you an idea of, and kind of just gives you a nice little title. It makes you a little bit have more of a specialty, but doesn't mean you can't go out of that specialty. So if that makes any sense. I know that was a lot of words.
No, it definitely makes sense. And I do think that speaks to the flexibility of the MSW. You can, pursue a clinical track and you can work one-on-one with patients for a long time. But this MSW does open up the possibility of working with communities, doing programming, working, in a corporation if you want to. It really does allow you to really be flexible in the environments that you get to utilize your skills as a social worker. So that's great. Thank you. I'm actually going to go right to the field placement because I know that both of you, Ethan and Ashley, have clients that you're meeting with at 3. So I want to make sure that we get as much time with you as possible. So they are actively working, everyone. So they've been so generous with their time today. And I, again, thank you both so much. But Ethan, I'll start with you. The process for having your advanced method year field placement, it really does tie in what your method area is, and for some students, the field of practice. But when you are in the DBT specialization, you are doing something DBT in nature. So I was wondering if you could tell us what the process was of being placed for that second year field placement and what you did during that field placement in terms of, utilizing the DBT skills that you were acquiring throughout your time here.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're in the DBT program, there is a smaller sort of pool of placements that you choose from that are only for DBT students. And that's because comprehensive DBT has all sort of those 4 components that I mentioned: the individual, the group, the phone coaching, and then the team meeting. And when you have a placement in the DBT program, ideally, and I would say this was true for all the students in my year, you hit all 4 of those components. You're having individual clients in which you're doing, individualized DBT. You are running at least one skills group. You are offering phone coaching to your individual clients, and then you're also attending the weekly team consultation meetings. And in terms of the process of, choosing your placement and interviewing for it, you do that through Dr. Ivanoff. You kind of run through the list, you tell her what you're interested in. She'll sort of set up interviews for you, and then you attend the interviews and you kind of see where it goes from there in terms of what you're interested in and what, the placements, which students they'd like to have be their interns.
That's amazing. And if you're comfortable, can you share where you were placed for that second year?
Yes, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that. Yes, I was at an outpatient private practice in Brooklyn that was called Brooklyn Heights Behavioral Associates, which is, it's a practice that offers comprehensive DBT as well as some other evidence-based therapies like, more straight up CBT, as well as exposure and response prevention. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Ashley, you had mentioned that your field of practice was health, mental health, and disabilities. And so can you describe what your process was like? I'm sure it was a little different from Ethan's about, securing that second year field placement and where you worked and what you were doing in that field placement.
Absolutely. I really came in with an open mind because the beauty of this field is that everything's very overlapping. And I once had a supervisor tell me everything is clinical. So a lot of times you'll hear students say, oh, this so isn't clinical. And in a way, everything can be viewed as such. So I kind of just went in with an open mind for my second year, for both placements, but for my second year placement. And you do have more priority for your second year placement for sure, assuming you are a traditional tier student. There are liability kind of factors with your first year. You're not always allowed to by law to do everything that you could as the second year. So I was at school, actually one of the first racially integrated school systems in the country. Which is really cool for my second year placement. And I loved it. Did a lot of play therapy and worked in social and emotional skill regulation. And I was really open. It was maybe my second or third choice. I don't really know I had a method behind my madness with ranking my field placement choices, but you will actually, I believe it's still done this way. You kind of get an online form and you kind of just rank what populations you want to work with, maybe who you're not so into. And I really encourage you to challenge yourselves because this is your experience. Another supervisor once told me you are paying for this experience. So you deserve to have what you want to the best of your ability while also keeping an open mind. So it's both. It's having what you want and also being open to maybe things that maybe are a little bit uncomfortable or unfamiliar. That's my advice. So you will rank what populations and also which placements you want to work in. That answers the question. I hope it did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point for students is that, that first year, you are really assigned your foundation year field placement. It's supposed to be direct practice in nature. So regardless of method area, you are working one-on-one with individuals, connecting them with resources to enhance well-being. That second year really does tie in the method area and you have much more agency in that. You actually rank the locations that you would like to be placed at, they align with your method area, you be gaining skills in that specific method area so they can go on and show that you have, experience in, a clinical setting doing, one-on-one therapeutic work. So that was an amazing way to describe that. So thank you. It is essentially a balloting process, which is really nice. And you essentially would work with an associate director of field education. And we have an entire office here that would help you navigate that process as well. My next question is for Dr. Kapadia. There are so many different types of therapeutic modalities. And so I was wondering if you could talk about, and you highlighted them in your initial description of this, and it was wonderful, but I was wondering, so many students they get very focused on it. It's a question we get, frequently. They are very interested in the modalities. And so I was wondering if you could speak to some of the ones that are taught here at CSSW.
Sure. So, it's an interesting question/conundrum, I think, because as a student, we really want to learn as much as possible. And so with that said, there is a broad range of modalities that are both evidence-based and evidence-informed interventions or ways of working. And I'll share a few examples. We have, as Ethan shared, we have DBT, we have classes on motivational interviewing and CBT, we have classes on psychoeducation, and then we have classes on evidence-based practices for people with serious mental health challenges that cover assertive community treatment, wellness management, shared decision-making, and evidence-informed approaches that might not be considered traditional evidence-based practices are ubiquitous. I mean, there's so many of them, including spirituality, substance use best practices, trauma-informed work across multiple populations. So there's really a broad range. And what I think I like to sort of share to students is that, it's great to hear about and follow through on learning about a particular modality, but also keeping in mind that we're developing these core skills that become really important that can be applied across modalities. But there's so many options, which I think is really pretty amazing. And the other piece to that is the expertise of the instructors. A lot of instructors who are teaching these courses are doing amazing clinical work in the field. And so they bring a lot of that into the classroom, which I think is really, really rewarding.
Which I think is a beautiful segue to the work that you've done. And I know that your experience in the clinical setting is extensive, and you've actually done, clinical and programming work with in community-based settings with individuals who have mental health challenges. And so I was wondering if you could, describe a little bit about the work that you've done and kind of the expertise that you're bringing into the classroom.
Sure. I started out over 20 years ago, which is sort of embarrassing to admit. And I started off working with women who were facing opioid addiction, and their stories affected me tremendously. And so during that time, I recognized sort of the impact of these complex environments and constraining people's capacity to receive adequate resources, to seek and maintain safety. And so that sort of spurred my interest in following this career path. And much of my clinical work subsequently has been rooted in the field of serious mental illness and in supporting individuals, in particular in their recovery processes, using evidence-based and evidence-informed interventions, trying to keep these larger social work lenses in mind, the strengths-based and resilience approaches and anti-oppressive practice, to really understand the tremendous interpersonal and systemic stigma and discrimination that people face. And a lot of the core elements that I mentioned before that we learn about in these classes really have stuck with me, and I've applied in the work that I've done. My other hat, so to speak, involves research and intervention development, in particular to address stigma and discrimination and to enhance mental health capacity. Given the times we're living in with COVID-19, most recently, work I've done has focused on community and spiritual leaders as close by as Harlem and as far away as Kenya and Brazil. Developing an integrated community participatory and context relevant psychoeducation intervention. And I'm currently leading a project with Dr. Robert Fullilove to develop and implement a psychoeducation intervention. And I think what's really neat about this intervention approach is that we're addressing COVID-19 recovery and resilience, but we're using a very clinical modality. We're using narrative and really listening to people's stories and applying this trust building through truth-telling approach that centers trust at the root of these collaborative working relationships with community leaders and institutions like Columbia. And the intention behind that is explicitly owning the truths of structural racism and discrimination in the work that we're doing and participating in. And so I think what I've learned in my 20 odd years is that when we can step back and recognize as clinicians in particular, but as researchers or anyone really in this social work profession, that we don't need to know all the answers. We are going to experience in the ACP track a lot of different modalities, a lot of different skills. We're going to be able to practice a lot of different skills, but we're going to leave with questions, and we're going to leave with skills to help us find the answer to those questions. So we don't need to be the experts. And I think once we let go of that piece, that we can have the tools to find the answers, then we can truly meaningfully connect with people we're working with and really hear their needs and understand the resilience among those with whom we work. And I think the other piece here to think about is the development and recognition of our own stories that we come to the school with, we'll come to the, our program and our field placement with, and we'll leave with, and that our own stories matter. And our perspectives and backgrounds and identities and social positionality all are going to influence the work in which we do. And that comes up quite a bit in the program. We have opportunities to reflect upon our own stories in relation to the people with whom we work. And I think these are some of the most important things that I've learned. The courses and trainings I received from this program as a master's student number of years ago, and through my supportive field placement supervisors as well, no doubt laid the groundwork for me and gave me the skills to really find out what I didn't know and to critically sort of look at what we do know in terms of evidence-based intervention work.
That's amazing. And I think you really, did I cut you off? I'm so sorry. Okay. I think you really beautifully sum up, I think, what the heart of what the curriculum is at the School of Social Work, which is eliciting those rich narratives so that you can actually work with individuals rather than imposing solutions, and actually allow them to be an active participant in this process and to speak their own truth. And also recognizing your own biases and being mindful of where you are and your own positionality. And I think that that's the kind of thing that's really suffused throughout the curriculum through PROP, power, race, oppression, and privilege, and just really understanding the ways that we can better enfranchise people and to empower them rather than imposing. And I think we get into this conversation about decolonizing social work. And I think that that's a part of where that comes from, is allowing others to also be a participant in that rather than saying, this is what you need to do. Yeah. So thank you. I mean, your work is extensive. And I think it's amazing how you position from clinical and also do programming, and shows the flexibility of what you can do and how you can really pivot from one to another. So thank you so much. That was fantastic. Ashley, my next question is for you. So many students are interested in doing, direct practice work. They want to work in a clinical setting. And so I know that you're currently doing that. You have a client right after this. And so I was wondering if you can tell us where you're currently working right now. You mentioned there are a couple different places, and just a little bit about the work that you are doing.
Absolutely. So I'm currently working at two places. One's called Just Friendly Counseling. The other's called Pascagoula Mental Health Center. And I'm licensed in both New York and New Jersey. My New Jersey license came in first. There were so many delays with COVID. So I'm so glad all of you will be after that in that hump of, the delays in the offices. So anyway, I had some bumps in my road, but grateful to be working. And I do a lot of psychodynamic psychotherapy. I use also CBT and DBT and other modalities. I work a lot. I don't know how this happened. I guess I'm open again to all populations, but I just kind of go by who I'm assigned to. And when you have your own practice, if you do want to do that, you kind of are able to decide more of what you want to specialize in and who you want to take on as clients. I've been assigned to a lot of young girls, it seems. So children, teens, adolescents, early 20s. That just seems to be my wheelhouse right now. And they all have a lot of different kind of things that they come in for. Eating disorder. One has cystic fibrosis. I have mom and daughter kind of stressors in their relationship. I have a client with learning differences, and she gets anxious when she presents in front of big groups. So it's all different kinds of people. And I'm really open. I also work with some LGBTQ identifiers, and I love all my people, and I learn so much from them. I always say I learn so much from them, and I'm hoping that I learned just as much from them as hopefully they gain from our time together. So really love the work, and it never gets boring. Ethan and Professor KL can definitely attest to that. It's always something new, and you're always kept on your toes. So if you like to move around a lot, clinical is probably for you. If you're more of a 9 to 5-ish, kind of sitting in a chair, which is also great, maybe clinical is still for you, maybe not. So something to think about, your strengths and what you like as well.
That's amazing. And I wanted to follow up. There are so many different populations that you mentioned there, so many different types of treatment. Was there a particular class that you loved that really stuck out for you, that may have helped you when it comes to working with a specific population or using a specific modality?
Oh, yes. So I loved, it's called Adult Psychopathology. It was Professor Corinne Lard. I don't know if Ethan took that class. Yeah, with her too. Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah, she's kind of like the main one, I feel like, for that class, or she was at least. I don't know what life's been like since COVID, but it's a really great class, and a lot of DSM, a lot of terminology, and I really, really gained so much. The beauty of this field as well is different clinicians have different insights and different opinions. So I might think somebody has one diagnosis, and you might think that they have another. So really, that class and really utilizing my peers, who are now my colleagues, as people who bring different insights to the table on a client was very fascinating and meaningful for me. And if you really are into the clinical track, again, the DSM is a great guide. Don't feel pressure to ever memorize everything unless it's for an exam. But in the real world, you really, or going to have that as a reference. So yes, for your licensure exam, you might need to know some things, but never think that you need to know it all, because the DSM is always changing. Everything in this field is always changing. So again, this field is really an ever-growing, transformative field. So if you're into that, then I know some people have questions about, is an MSW better than maybe a mental health counseling kind of track? And I would say that this field, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but it really does offer diversity in terms of the environments you can work in and using a social justice and person environment approach, because we're all influenced by our environment. So I do believe that there's no right or wrong. I believe that a lot of these fields are overlapping. However, I do believe that social work offers the most variety and gives you the most opportunity. That's just, I'm not biased, but I kind of am, but I'm really not. So yes, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And Ethan, I'm going to ask you the same question. If you could let us know where you're currently working, if you're comfortable letting us know, and the work that you're doing, and if there was a class that you had at CSSW that you absolutely loved.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working at a group practice in LA. It's called Suzanne Wallach and Associates, as well as SoCal DBT. It's got two names because there is sort of two parts to my job. I'm part of the comprehensive DBT team, where, as I said, I offer comprehensive DBT, doing all four parts of it. And I also see clients in sort of, where we say it in our private practice, everyone still works together. It's still, we're still a team, but it's clients who may not need the full DBT treatment, or just coming in with sort of, other things that they'd like assistance with, whether that's, just like depression and anxiety or what have you. Right. So I see sort of a variety of clients though. And in terms of courses that I really liked, it's hard to choose one. I actually took a class with Professor Kapadia and the Hub C on mental health stigma. I loved that class. I really liked social work practice 2 with Dr. Richard Hara. There is, in the DBT program, you are a part of, it's called the Advanced DBT Seminar, and that's where you have your own team with all the students in the program. And I adored that class. I also really I took, in your second semester of your second year, you take mini advanced clinical courses. And one of the ones I took was on trauma work. And I really loved that class as well. That was with Professor Ortega.
Amazing. I actually have a follow-up question for both of you, because you both mentioned where you're located and licensing. We have students who are in our online campus, and the advanced clinical practice is available for them. And so many of them are wondering, what was licensing like? How was that process for you? Especially, you, Ethan, you're working in California where things are a little different. So I'll begin with you. Can you kind of just describe the process, how CSSW helped you? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in being in the ACP track, you take basically all the courses that you need to qualify for licensure. With California specifically, that California's they like to do things a little differently, which is it's great. But what I'll say is for California, you do not need to take the ASWB master's exam, which you need for New York or New Jersey or what have you. The only thing you need actually to get licensed initially out of school is you need to graduate, you need to submit some paperwork, and then there's also a course called California Law and Ethics that you can take basically online. The NASW chapter in California actually offers it as well. You have to pay for it, but that's the one thing you need in terms of getting your C though, right? To become an LCSW in California, that's where you need to take specific courses. So those you can take in school while in Columbia to just kind of get a jump start on that. You don't need those though for when you graduate, fortunately. And all of those courses that you do need to take as well can be offered sort of online, or you can take them, at school while you're working, what have you, right? And then the one other thing as well for California. So you don't need to take an exam when you graduate, but you do need to take an exam a year after you first get licensed. That is also, again, on the California Law and Ethics. And in terms of what helped me, I contacted my advisor in my second year, and he connected me with people at Columbia who helped sort of just give me information and insight on where I could take these courses and all that kind of stuff.
That's amazing. And I should mention that the advisors here at Columbia are social workers. And so they really do try to be able to connect individuals with the resources they need to be able to gain licensure and be able to practice in specific states. And we have so many students now who are across the United States. So it is something that we are always mindful of and try to be as helpful as possible. But it's always good to really work with your advisor whenever you're doing that, so that you are taking the classes you need, so that you're prepared, so that you don't move to a city and then you find out that you're missing something. So always good to be, transparent about what your future plans are, what you might want to do so that you can prepare whenever you're selecting courses. And Ashley, could you describe a little bit about your licensing process, if CSSW helped you, that whole rigmarole that I know is a lot for some students?
Yes. So CSW did help. Betty G, who works in what department? Oh,
Student services, yeah.
apparently is a savior, people say. And also my professor, Raji, whose last name I won't even attempt to pronounce because she doesn't even attempt to pronounce it in front of us, and I don't want to butcher it. Raji, I'll send you her full name. She's great. And she really gave us all, in her class, she gave us, it was a clinical course just for the mental health disabilities focus. And she really gave us insight, and I'm so grateful for that because it is confusing. Each state is different. New Jersey and New York do go hand in hand, which is great. So if you take one exam for New York, then you can just pay some money and do a little bit of paperwork and transfer it over, and vice versa. And yeah, so I just filled out paperwork. You my experience is a little bit different because I graduated in 2020, so that was COVID prime time, when no office knew what they were doing. So I had a little bit of a different experience, but be patient. Sometimes these state offices, to be quite transparent, are a little bit slower, even regardless of COVID. So bear with them, keep following up, keep advocating for yourself, because that's what we're taught in social work school, keep advocating. And regardless of COVID, some of these places are a little slower. It's just the way it is. You have to just keep giving them nudges and calling and emailing, or maybe you'll be lucky, maybe you won't have to do that. But each state is different, and California is definitely one of those exceptions, but a lot of states you can actually just pay a fee and transfer things over, which is kind of nice. And yeah, that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Thank you. Yes, I know that's a process for students, and knowing that there are resources here and that it is something that one can accomplish, I think is a very reassuring, because the idea of that, I think, is very intimidating. At least it is to me. I would be intimidated. And this has been absolutely wonderful and extremely helpful. And so before I start to ask some questions from the chat, or questions that I received during the registration, which I think might be really helpful for individuals, I was wondering if each of you could just describe some of the critical skills that a student in this method area should really absorb and take with them post-graduation. So Dr. Kapadia, I'll begin with you.
Anyone guess what my number one skill is? It's listening. It's really all we need. I mean, I've learned that in so many different profound ways, and unconditional positive regard. The other one I think that I hold up there as gold is really recognizing the environmental context within which folks are situated and organizations are situated. So really understanding that micro to macro level sphere of influence, if you will, recognizing resilience, and then our roles as advocates and vessels of empowerment, if you will. I think it's incredibly important, even for those of us who are situated in the clinical world, to really recognize that we have a responsibility to deconstruct these systems of oppression and advocate for those with whom we work, whether it's one-on-one or with families or with groups or beyond. And I think it's that, again, that power in the narrative can influence within and across these systems. And I think it's really important for us to keep that in mind.
Thank you so much. Ashley, we'll go with you next.
Yes, I really carried out so many tools from this program. I agree. I love all the listening and the active method of listening. And if you're all taking a licensure exam, you already have 1 point. That's definitely usually some kind of question on that exam. I think actually I don't know because I'm not done APGAR. But so I would say active listening, and I would say I really learned to be mindful, just to be aware of my surroundings. And cultural competency is something that is always something I attempt, especially as a white woman, to keep in mind, and always learning and always trying to see where I can be doing better. I would say just being open and, to new experiences, to new kinds of people. I think leadership is a really big part of social work. And I think that you will have the opportunity in and out of the classroom to do that and to take those skills to your workplace. And that's kind of some of my learning.
Amazing. Thank you. And finally, Ethan.
Yeah, I think I'll just echo kind of a lot of what Professor Kapadia and Ashley just said in terms of empathic listening, ensuring, keeping an eye on, equity and social justice and playing a part of, deconstructing, oppressive structures and what have you, and advocating for your clients. I'd say prioritizing the relationship with your clients as well. Studies have shown that it doesn't matter what sort of modality or intervention you're offering, if the relationship isn't there, then nothing's going to work. And in terms of something, I guess, to offer DBT specific is the main dialectic that you hold as a clinician is the one between acceptance and change. So always sort of prioritizing, that acceptance and that validation for your clients when they come in, and then also, ensuring that you can provide them the change that they want to help them achieve the goals that they want and the life that they want to have.
That's amazing. Thank you. And I hear that a lot from students who are, or professionals, I should say, who are in the clinical therapeutic field, is that you'll learn a lot of different modalities and eventually you'll learn what works for you. But more than anything, it's that human connection. It is that, working with individuals and being an active listener and being empathetic and actually, being a human. It's like a lot of things are evidence-based and scientific in nature, but when you're one-on-one with an individual and you're processing trauma, that's a very human experience. And so there isn't a one size or one modality fits all. It really is expansive, and you kind of got to pull from your toolkit and really just be present with an open mind and an open heart. So I appreciate all of you for everything, your wisdom, for being here today, for being so fantastic. And I'm gonna take just a quick look at the questions to see if there's anything. I know we've got about 5 minutes left. I might be putting Dr. Kapadi on the spot, and I hope not. But I think one question we get a lot from students is, okay, I'm interested in doing this. I want to be a therapist. So what's the difference between, getting your MSW and getting like a mental health counseling degree? Why would I choose one versus the other? And I always have a reason for students, but I was wondering, you, the expert, what would your reason be?
So this is my sort of take on social work. I truly believe that the root of social work, the way in which we should or do practice, is really thinking about this systems level work and interacting within and across these systems and environments that continually oppress and hinder access to resources and create barriers for recovery and resilience. And social workers are positioned very well, given the training that we receive, to push back or to open doors or to facilitate resilience and recovery, and to enhance capacity and human agency. And I think that's what we offer from this multi-lens perspective.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then my last question, quickly for Ethan and Ashley. What do you wish someone would have told you before you started your MSW? I will start with Ethan.
Oh my goodness.
Or advice you would wish you would have gotten. So
yeah. No, it's a good question. It's just a tough one. I mean, I think similar to kind of the things that I said before in terms of advice, just prioritize the relationship, try to find as well sort of, I feel like if you come into this program like with a very one-track mind, you can sort of exclude yourself from lots of different things that you could learn. So try to be open-minded as well to all the courses and the experiences that you have, even if, let's say, your first year field placement isn't perfect, right? And then the last thing that I just want to say personally is, if you're interested in the DBT program at all, I can't recommend it enough. It was one of the most rewarding and informative experiences that I personally ever had. So just want to shout that out there too.
And finally, Ashley, you. One thing you wish someone would have told you.
Or I would say I wish someone had told me to just enjoy. I think sometimes we forget, we practice, we don't always practice, or at least I'll speak for myself, I don't always practice what I preach. We learn a lot about mindfulness and being present. And sometimes we're hustling and bustling, and it's hard to enjoy and be present in the moment. And just enjoy and be open. A lot of us are hopefully attracted to this field because we are open-minded people. And of course, sometimes maybe things don't always go our way. Maybe we're not always content with certain parts of the program, meaning our field placement potentially, but maybe a lot of times we are content with a lot of parts of the program. So think about the parts that we are content with and know that we can only make the best of the parts we're not content with. And I think just trying to be optimistic about enjoying the program. A lot of people just want to rush kind of to get their degree and they just want to be practicing, but I think just enjoying. And I think it's a great program. I gained so much, so many friends, colleagues, and I'm very grateful. And I hope wherever you decide to go or apply to, you are as well. And I'm excited to have been with you all today, and good luck.
Thank you all so much. We are at 2:59, so I will let our alums go. Thank you all. And thanks everyone for coming. I know that there were questions that we didn't get to, such as financing, questions about different specializations, things that you can do. I highly encourage you to come to some of our other sessions that we're going to be hosting all next week. We're going to have an entire MSW program, or an entire info session about our MSW program, where we're going to talk about all of the different ways that you can finance your education, all the different kinds of specializations and minors you can get. And we want to be a resource for you, and we want to make sure that you feel supported during this process, and to be fully transparent, and to be able to give you what you need to make an informed decision. So I cannot thank Dr. Kapadia enough, our two alums who have already needed to leave, but that's totally fine. I knew that I was like, we're hitting it right at 3 p.m. So again, thank you so much to our panelists and to everybody who attended today. It was really, really wonderful. Thank you all so much.